Director Rachel Morrison had been preparing for this moment for 30 years of her life. Every single day of those 3 decades had been spent learning alien languages, studying foreign cultures, and understanding the complex politics of species that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. She had sacrificed everything for this chance. Her marriage had fallen apart. Her children had grown up barely knowing her. Her entire existence had become focused on one goal: getting humanity accepted into the Galactic Council. Now she stood in the massive chamber at Nexus Prime, the center of galactic civilization. The station was so enormous that it made Earth's moon look tiny by comparison. Millions of beings from hundreds of different species lived there, making decisions that affected trillions of lives across thousands of star systems. Rachel was 52 years old. Her hair had turned gray early from stress and sleepless nights. She wore the formal diplomatic uniform of Earth, dark blue with silver trim, representing all of humanity. In her hand, she held a small data device containing 30 years of research, documentation, and carefully crafted arguments for why humans deserved a place among the stars. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. 14 platforms floated in a perfect circle around a central stage where Rachel stood alone. Each platform held one council member, and each member represented a species that had been exploring space since before humans had discovered fire. The Valari was a being of pure light, constantly shifting and flowing like a living star. Its voice sounded like music and thunder combined. The Kthra was a massive insect, 3 meters tall with gleaming black armor and compound eyes that reflected everything. The Vanth was a reptile covered in deep purple scales, its eyes cold and ancient. There were others too: the Mycelian, a fungal being that communicated through chemical signals. The Crystalline, architects made of living crystal. The Archon, an entity so old it claimed to remember the birth of the first stars. All of them looked down at Rachel. All of them waited. Rachel took a deep breath and began her speech. She had practiced these words thousands of times. She had worked with the greatest minds on Earth to make every sentence perfect. "Honored members of the Council," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Humanity comes before you today with respect and hope. We know we are young compared to your great civilizations. We know we have much to learn. But we also believe we have much to offer." She gestured to the holographic display she had brought. Images of Earth appeared, showing beautiful landscapes, bustling cities, and humans working together on incredible projects. "We are creative problem solvers," Rachel continued. "When we face obstacles, we find ways around them. When we encounter challenges, we build solutions. We have survived ice ages that should have killed us. We have overcome diseases that threatened to wipe us out. We have endured wars and disasters and found ways to rebuild stronger than before." The council members watched in silence. Some seemed interested. Others looked bored. A few appeared annoyed, as if she was wasting their valuable time. "We don't ask for special treatment," Rachel said. "We don't expect you to give us anything we haven't earned. We simply ask for the opportunity to prove ourselves. Let us show you what humanity can contribute to the greater galactic community. Let us work alongside you to build a better future for all species." When she finished, silence filled the chamber. The council members looked at each other, communicating in ways Rachel couldn't understand. Perhaps through mental links or private channels. She stood alone on the central platform and waited for their response. Finally, the Kthra spoke first. Its voice came out as clicking and hissing sounds that Rachel's translator turned into words she could understand. "You speak of creativity and problem-solving," the insect said. "But you cannot survive in vacuum. You cannot breathe underwater. You cannot handle temperature changes that our children endure without discomfort. Where is this adaptation you speak of?" Rachel had prepared for this. "We adapt through our minds and our technology. We build suits that let us walk in space. We create submarines that let us explore the deepest oceans. We develop tools that extend our natural abilities far beyond what our bodies can do alone." "So you destroy your environment," the Vanth interrupted, its reptilian voice cold and sharp. "We have observed your home world. We have seen the pollution choking your air. We have watched species go extinct because of your actions. We have monitored your climate becoming unstable. You poison your own planet and call it progress. Why would we want such destructive beings among us?" The words stung, but Rachel kept her composure. "We have made mistakes. Serious mistakes. But we are learning from them. We are working to fix the damage we caused. That ability to recognize our errors and correct them is part of our strength." The Valari laughed. At least Rachel thought it was laughter. The being of light pulsed and flickered in a way that seemed amused. "Little human," the Valari said, its musical voice filled with condescension. We have watched a million species rise and fall. We have witnessed stars being born and dying. We have solved problems your primitive minds cannot even imagine. What could you possibly offer that we have not already discovered and discarded as worthless? Rachel felt her carefully prepared arguments crumbling. This wasn't going the way she had hoped. But she pressed on. We offer ourselves, our loyalty, our dedication, our fresh perspective. Sometimes the newest voice in the room sees things that others have missed. Sometimes youth brings energy and innovation that ancient wisdom has forgotten. More silence. More private communication between council members that excluded her completely. Then the mycelium spoke, its chemical signals creating words through Rachel's translator. Your species has existed for barely a moment by our standards. You discovered agriculture just yesterday. You learned to ride a heartbeat ago. You reached space only seconds ago in cosmic time. You are infants. Come back in 10,000 years when you have actually grown up. But we, Rachel tried to argue. Enough, the Archon interrupted. Its voice sounded like wind blowing through empty caves. Ancient and dry and final. We have heard your petition. We have considered your words. We have reviewed all the data our observers have collected about your species over the past 60 years. Rachel held her breath. This was it. The moment that would determine humanity's future among the stars. The decision of this council is unanimous, the Archon continued. Humanity is denied membership in the Galactic Council. The words hit Rachel like a physical punch to the stomach. She had known this might happen. She had told herself she would accept whatever decision they made with dignity. But hearing the actual words spoken out loud hurt in ways she hadn't expected. May I ask why? She managed to say. Her voice stayed steady. She was proud of that small victory. The Valari answered, and its tone was cruel. You are too young, too aggressive, too unpredictable. Your species shows some promise, perhaps, but also great danger. You fight wars among yourselves constantly. You destroy without thinking. You consume resources without restraint. These are not qualities we value in member species. The Kthra added its own criticism. You also lack any psionic capability whatsoever. Every single council species possesses some form of mental power. Telepathy, telekinesis, precognition. Your minds are blind and deaf to the mental spectrum that connects all advanced life. You are, quite literally, disabled. Your biology is laughably fragile, the Vance said. You require extremely specific conditions to survive. Temperature, atmosphere, gravity, radiation levels. The range of environments you can tolerate naturally is embarrassingly narrow. You would be a burden to any fleet or station forced to accommodate you. The mycelium delivered the final insult. Your home world is strategically worthless. A small planet orbiting a small star in a region of space that offers nothing of value. You control no resources we need. You occupy no territory we want. You are, to be completely direct, useless to us. Each criticism was like a knife cutting into Rachel's pride. But she stood there and took it all. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. There was clearly no point. Return to your single star, the Valari commanded. Be grateful we don't classify you as a pest species that needs to be managed or eliminated. Perhaps in 10,000 years, if your kind survives that long, you may petition us again. Though honestly we doubt you will survive. Primitive species like yours rarely do. Rachel looked around the chamber one final time. She saw nothing but dismissal in their alien eyes. Nothing but absolute certainty that humanity was worthless and would always be worthless. That's when she made her decision. She reached into her pocket and activated the illegal recording device she had hidden in her clothing. It was absolutely forbidden to record council proceedings without explicit permission. She didn't care anymore. She captured everything. Every council member's face. Every gesture of contempt. Every whispered comment her translator picked up. The Kthra calling humans meat that thinks. The Vanth comparing them to a disease that needed quarantine. The Archon already ignoring her and moving on to more important business. Rachel memorized every detail. Then she turned and walked back down the 3-kilometer-long corridor toward her ship. She didn't rush. She didn't let them see her cry. She kept her head high and her back straight the entire way. Captain Brian Torres was waiting when she reached the ship. He was a good officer. Calm and steady. He took one look at Rachel's face and immediately understood what had happened. I'm sorry, Director, he said quietly. Don't be, Rachel replied, her voice harder than steel. They just showed us exactly what we are to them. And that knowledge is more valuable than membership ever would have been. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Rachel spent most of that time alone in her quarters, watching the recording over and over again. Each insult, each dismissal, each moment of pure contempt from beings who saw humanity as nothing more than annoying insects buzzing around their perfect galactic civilization. By the time her ship entered Earth's solar system, Rachel had made her decision. She knew exactly what she needed to do. The United Terran Assembly met in Geneva, Switzerland. It was the largest gathering of human leaders in history. Representatives from every nation on Earth filled the massive hall. But the audience was much bigger than that. 3 billion people watched through screens, broadcasts, and holographic displays across the entire planet. Everyone wanted to know what had happened at Nexus Prime. Everyone wanted to know if humanity had been accepted among the stars. Rachel walked to the central podium. The hall fell completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Billions of people held their breath, waiting for her words. She didn't give them a speech. Not yet. Instead, she simply played the recording. For 45 minutes, the entire human species watched and listened as the Galactic Council systematically tore them apart. They heard the Valari call humans mentally disabled. They heard the Kthra label them fragile meat. They heard the Vance cite every human failure and mistake as proof of incompetence. They heard the Mycelian dismiss Earth as strategically worthless. When the recording ended with the Council's final command to go home and never bother them again, the silence in the hall was deafening. Some people in the audience were crying. Others looked angry enough to fight. Most just sat in stunned disbelief, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Rachel let the silence stretch for a full minute. Then she spoke. They see us as nothing, she said, her voice clear and strong. Less than nothing. They see us as pests. As vermin. As a mistake of evolution that will correct itself in time. They believe we will destroy ourselves within a few thousand years. They believe we will fail at everything we attempt. They believe we will crawl back to our small planet and die in obscurity while they continue ruling the stars forever. She paused and looked out at the assembled representatives. Her eyes were hard as steel. They are wrong. Her voice grew stronger with each word. They are wrong because they don't understand what we really are. They measure worth in years of existence and psychic powers in ancient territory. They count our weaknesses and completely ignore our strengths. They see our fragile bodies and miss our unbreakable spirit. They see our youth and forget that every ancient species was young once. Rachel activated the massive star map behind her. It showed the known galaxy with the Galactic Council's territory marked in gold. The core systems. The rich worlds. The developed territories. Everything the ancient species controlled. The Council controls the heart of the galaxy, Rachel said. They have everything they could possibly want. Rich planets. Ancient technology. Established trade routes. They have no reason to look beyond their comfortable borders. And beyond those borders lies something they have completely forgotten about. The map shifted to show a vast region of unexplored space far from the galactic core. It looked dark and empty compared to the bright golden territory of the Council. The Outer Rim, Rachel continued. The Council considers it worthless. Too far from the core. Too dangerous to develop. Too empty to bother with. No Council species has explored it seriously in thousands of years. They think there's nothing out there worth having. Rachel smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was cold and determined and a little bit frightening. They gave us nothing. They told us we deserve nothing. So we're going to take everything they left behind. We're going to the Outer Rim. We're going to explore those dark systems they're too comfortable to bother with. We're going to settle worlds they think are worthless. We're going to build something completely new. Something entirely our own. Not in their systems. Not by their rules. Not with their permission. She looked directly into the cameras now, speaking to all 3 billion people watching across Earth. They cast us aside like garbage. They told us we have no place among the stars. Fine. We'll make our own place. We'll prove them wrong about everything. And one day, when they finally look up from their comfortable thrones and see what we've become, they'll understand the biggest mistake they ever made. The hall erupted. Some people cheered wildly. Others shouted in protest. Some demanded immediate war and revenge against the Council. Others counseled patience and caution. But Rachel had planted the seed deep in humanity's collective mind. And once planted, that seed began to grow rapidly. The debate lasted for months. Every nation had opinions. Every leader had concerns. Every scientist and engineer and economist weighed in on whether this plan was brilliant or insane. But slowly, steadily, the Outer Rim initiative took shape. Engineers across Earth began designing new types of colony ships. These weren't the small research vessels humanity had been building. These were massive arc ships, each one capable of carrying 50,000 people plus everything they would need to establish a completely self-sufficient colony. The ships needed to travel farther than any human vessel had gone before. They needed to carry enough supplies to last years. They needed to be tough enough to survive in completely unknown conditions. Scientists developed new technologies for surviving in alien environments, better life support systems, more efficient food production, advanced medical facilities that could handle diseases they hadn't discovered yet, power generators that could run for decades without maintenance, communication arrays strong enough to send messages across unimaginable distances. The cost was astronomical. Every nation on Earth contributed resources. Entire economies shifted to support the project. Factories that had built cars started building ship components. Companies that had made consumer electronics started making survival equipment. Universities focused their research on solving the thousands of problems that deep space colonization would create. And the volunteers came. Billions of them. Families who wanted their children to grow up under alien stars. Young people seeking adventure and purpose. Scientists eager to study completely new worlds. Engineers excited to build cities where no human had ever stood. Even elderly people who wanted to spend their final years contributing to humanity's greatest endeavor. Not everyone agreed with the plan, of course. Many thought it was too risky. What if the outer rim really was empty and worthless like the Council claimed? What if the colony ships failed and everyone aboard died? What if humanity was spreading itself too thin? Others thought it was too expensive. Earth still had problems. Poverty, disease, environmental damage that needed fixing. Shouldn't those resources go to helping people at home instead of sending them into the darkness? Some people thought humanity should just accept its place. Stay in the solar system. Build a good life on Earth and nearby planets. Stop trying to compete with species that had been exploring space for thousands of years. But enough people believed. Enough people remembered watching that recording and feeling the burn of humiliation. Enough people looked at the stars and refused to accept being forbidden from reaching them. Enough people wanted to prove the Council wrong badly enough to risk everything. 10 years passed in intense preparation. The shipyards in Earth orbit worked around the clock. The first generation of colony ships took shape slowly. Each one was kilometers long, a city in space designed to carry tens of thousands of people to worlds they had never seen. Rachel was 62 years old now. Her hair had gone completely gray. The stress and endless work had aged her beyond her years. She knew she wouldn't live long enough to see what humanity would become out there in the darkness. She would never know if the outer rim held treasures or nothing but empty rocks. She would die without knowing if her gamble had paid off. But she had given humanity something more valuable than answers. She had given them direction. She had given them purpose. She had transformed rejection into motivation. She had turned humiliation into fuel that would power human expansion for generations. The day finally came when the first wave of colony ships was ready to launch. 12 massive vessels, each carrying 50,000 brave volunteers. They would travel for years to reach the nearest outer rim systems. They had no idea what they would find when they arrived. Rachel stood at the observation window of the orbital station, watching as the ships prepared for departure. Captain Brian Torres stood beside her, the same officer who had commanded her ship to Nexus Prime a decade ago. "Do you really think they can do it?" he asked quietly. "Build something out there that'll make the Council regret what they said?" Rachel didn't answer immediately. She watched the ships one by one as they fired their engines and began the long journey into unknown space. She thought about all the families aboard. All the hopes and dreams. All the courage it took to leave everything familiar behind. "I think," she said slowly, "that the Council has never encountered anything like us before. They've spent thousands of years conquering other species or absorbing them into their civilization. They know how to handle species that fight back. They know how to handle species that surrender. But they have absolutely no idea how to handle a species that simply refuses to accept their verdict." The last ship disappeared from view, swallowed by the infinite darkness between stars. "We're going into the unknown," Rachel continued. "We have no maps. No guides. No guarantee of success. We might fail completely. We might all die out there. We might prove the Council right after all." She turned away from the window, and that cold, determined smile crossed her face again. "But I don't think we will. Because humans have one quality the Council didn't account for. We don't know how to quit. We don't know how to accept defeat. We don't know how to stay in the place others put us. And that stubbornness they called a weakness? That's actually our greatest strength." The exodus had begun. Humanity was moving into the darkness, carrying nothing but determination and hope. 50 years had passed since Rachel Morrison stood before the Galactic Council and heard humanity dismissed as worthless. 50 years of colony ships launching into the darkness. 50 years of messages sent back to Earth, some carrying good news, some carrying tragedy, and some never arriving at all. Rachel herself had died peacefully in her sleep at age 89, surrounded by family and friends. Her last words had been a simple question: have we found anything yet? The answer at that moment had been disappointing. The early expeditions had discovered plenty of lifeless rocks, frozen ice balls, and dead planets where nothing grew and nothing lived. Some colonists had settled on these harsh worlds anyway, determined to make something from nothing through sheer stubborn will. Others had pushed deeper into the unknown, always searching for something better. Captain Derek Hayes commanded the exploration vessel Pathfinder. He was 38 years old, born on Earth but raised on one of the early colonies. He'd spent his entire adult life jumping from system to system, mapping unexplored space and looking for worlds where humans could actually thrive instead of just barely survive. This was the 7-star system his crew had surveyed in the past year. The previous 6 had been disappointing in different ways. Gas giants with crushing gravity. Asteroid fields with nothing useful. Planets with toxic atmospheres or deadly radiation. Each failure made the crew a little more tired, a little more discouraged. But this planet was different from the moment they entered orbit. "Captain, you need to see this," Lieutenant Jessica Wells called from her station. She was the ship's science officer, brilliant and detail-oriented. The excitement in her voice was unmistakable. Derek moved to look at her displays. The planet below them was absolutely beautiful. Deep blue oceans covered about 70% of the surface. Green and brown continents sat beneath swirling white clouds. The atmosphere read as breathable, rich in oxygen. The temperature ranges were comfortable. Gravity was only slightly higher than Earth normal. "It looks perfect," Derek said quietly. "Too perfect. What's the catch?" "No catch that I can find," Jessica replied, running scan after scan. "Abundant plant life. Animal life in the oceans and on the land. No signs of intelligent inhabitants. No cities, no structures, no electromagnetic signals. If anyone lives here now, they're living in caves and hitting rocks together." Derek felt hope rising in his chest for the first time in months. Life signs could mean the ecosystem is stable. We wouldn't be starting from scratch like the ice colony. "There's more," Jessica continued. "The soil composition looks incredibly fertile. Multiple climate zones. Mineral deposits. Fresh water systems. Captain, this planet is better than Earth was before we started messing it up." The crew prepared for landing with careful precision. They'd learned from early mistakes. You didn't just rush down to a new planet without thorough preparation. They spent 3 days in orbit, scanning everything, analyzing the atmosphere, checking for dangers that might not be immediately obvious. Finally, Derek gave the order. The Pathfinder descended through the clouds and landed in a wide valley near a river. When the airlock opened and Derek took his first breath of alien air, it smelled clean and fresh, like Earth forests after a rainstorm. "This is incredible," Jessica said, stepping out beside him. The survey team spread out, setting up equipment and taking samples. Everything checked out. The water was drinkable with minimal treatment. The plants weren't toxic. The local bacteria wouldn't make humans sick. This planet was genuinely, impossibly perfect for colonization. They spent the first day exploring the immediate area around the landing site. Then they expanded their search in wider circles. On the 3rd day they found something that changed everything. Lieutenant Kevin Park was leading a survey team through a dense forest when his instruments started showing strange readings. "Captain, I'm detecting something unusual about 2 kilometers north of my position. The density scans don't match natural geological formations." "What do they match?" Derek asked over the radio. "Something artificial. Something built." Derek and Jessica immediately headed to Kevin's location. What they found took their breath away. Rising above the forest canopy were structures unlike anything in human architecture. Towers made of materials that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Walls covered in symbols and patterns that clearly meant something but were completely unreadable. Bridges connecting buildings that had no obvious purpose. And everything was ancient. Vines covered most of the surfaces. Trees had grown through cracks in the foundations. Centuries, maybe thousands of years of decay had worn down the edges and buried the lower levels under soil and vegetation. "Who built this?" Jessica whispered, running her scanner over the nearest wall. "These materials? I can't even identify what they're made of. It's not metal, not stone, not anything in our databases." Derek touched one of the walls carefully. It felt smooth and slightly warm despite being in shadow. Whoever they were way ahead of us technologically. Look at these joints. No seams. No fasteners. It's like they grew these buildings instead of constructing them. The team spent days exploring the ruins. The city, if that's what it was, stretched for kilometers in every direction. Most of it was too damaged to understand. Collapsed buildings. Shattered equipment. Whatever writing or records might have existed had long since weathered away. Where did they go? Kevin asked one evening as the team sat around their camp. Why would anyone abandon a planet this perfect? Nobody had answers. But the mystery deepened their determination to explore every corner of the ruins. It was Jessica who found the sealed entrance. She'd been mapping the largest structure in the city, a massive pyramid-like building at the center of everything. Her instruments detected a hollow space deep beneath it, and temperature readings that suggested something down there was warmer than it should be. There's still power, she said, showing Derek the readings. After thousands of years, something down there is still running. They found the entrance on the north side of the pyramid, buried under 3 meters of dirt and debris. It took 2 full days of careful excavation to clear it. What they uncovered made them all stop and stare. A door. A massive door made of metal that gleamed like it had been polished yesterday. No rust. No corrosion. No weathering at all. It looked brand new despite being buried for who knows how long. That's impossible, Kevin said. Nothing stays preserved like that. Not without active maintenance. Derek approached the door slowly, his instruments going crazy with readings. Energy signatures. Magnetic fields. Radiation types that didn't appear in any human database. Something behind that door was still active and still powered. Should we try to open it? Jessica asked. Derek thought about the risks. They had no idea what was behind that door. It could be dangerous technology. It could be a defense system still protecting something. It could be nothing at all, just an empty room that had stayed sealed by accident. But they'd come millions of kilometers into unexplored space specifically to find things like this. Playing it safe wasn't why humanity had ventured into the outer rim. Yes, Derek decided. But carefully. Very carefully. It took them 3 days to figure out how to open the door. There was no handle, no visible lock, no obvious mechanism. Traditional tools did nothing. Trying to cut through the metal just made their equipment overheat and shut down. Kevin finally discovered the solution almost by accident. He'd been playing music on his portable speaker during a break, and the door had vibrated slightly at certain frequencies. After hours of experimentation, they found the right combination. A specific pattern of tones played in a precise sequence. The door responded with a soft hiss and slid open smoothly, like it had just been installed yesterday instead of sitting sealed for thousands of years. Behind it was something nobody expected. Instead of darkness and dust, they found light. Soft blue light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The chamber beyond was perfectly preserved, as if time had simply stopped at its threshold. Derek stepped inside cautiously, his hand on the weapon he hoped he wouldn't need. The chamber was circular, about 20 meters across. Columns of that strange blue light rose from floor to ceiling. The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to pulse and shift as he watched them, like living writing. In the exact center of the room, floating in midair with nothing holding it up, was a sphere about the size of a human head. The sphere appeared to be made of crystal or something similar. Inside it, patterns of light moved and danced in impossibly complex formations. It was beautiful in a way that made Derek's eyes hurt if he looked at it too long. The patterns seemed to have depth, like looking into an ocean of stars. What is it? Jessica breathed from behind him. Derek reached out toward the sphere slowly. As his hand got closer, the patterns inside changed. They formed shapes that almost looked like words, though in no language Derek recognized. The light grew brighter, warmer. Then he touched it. Knowledge exploded into Derek's mind like a dam breaking. Not words, not images, but pure information pouring directly into his consciousness. He saw stars being born from clouds of gas. He saw civilizations rising from primitive beginnings to cosmic power. He saw wars fought across entire galaxies. He saw peace treaties between species that no longer existed anywhere in the universe. He saw technologies that bent physics in ways humans thought impossible. Ships that traveled between dimensions. Weapons that could crack planets. Medical advances that cured death itself. And he saw the builders. The ones who had created this place, this planet, this gift. They called themselves something that Derek's mind translated roughly as the Precursors. They had ruled the galaxy long before the Galactic Council existed. Long before any of the current species had evolved past primitive life. They had built wonders that made Nexus Prime look like a child's toy. They had understood secrets of the universe that modern science hadn't even begun to approach. And then they had left. Not died. Not been destroyed. Simply moved on. To another plane of existence or another galaxy, or some state of being that Derek's human mind couldn't fully comprehend. But they had left things behind. Gifts for whoever came after them. Knowledge stored in crystal spheres like this one. Manufacturing facilities waiting to be reactivated. Star maps showing resources scattered across unexplored space. Gates that open pathways to distant regions of the galaxy. All of it hidden in the outer rim. The region the Galactic Council had dismissed as worthless and never bothered to explore properly. Derek pulled his hand back from the sphere, gasping. He was shaking. Tears streamed down his face though he didn't know why. "Captain?" Jessica grabbed his arm. "Are you all right? What happened?" Derek looked at her. Then at the sphere. Then he started laughing though it came out half like sobbing. "We need to send a message to Earth," he said. "Right now." "What should it say?" Derek wiped his eyes and smiled. "Tell them we found something much, much better than a habitable planet. Tell them we found hope." Admiral Jack Sullivan stood at the observation deck of Bastion Station and watched another construction crew add a new residential ring to the habitat. 10 years ago this location had been completely empty space, just another anonymous point in the vast darkness of the outer rim. Now it was the beating heart of humanity's new civilization. Bastion Station orbited a captured gas giant in a system humans had named New Haven. The station itself was massive, a sprawling structure of interconnected modules, habitation rings, industrial sectors, and docking facilities. 3 million people called it home now, and that number grew by thousands every month as more ships arrived from Earth and the older colonies. Jack was 60 years old, a veteran of the early exploration fleets. He'd spent most of his adult life in space, jumping from system to system in the desperate search for a place where humanity could build a real future. He'd watched dozens of colonies struggle into existence. He'd seen some fail and be abandoned. He'd witnessed countless acts of courage and sacrifice as humans fought to establish themselves in an unforgiving universe. The view from the observation deck never got old. Shipyards stretched out from the station's industrial sector for kilometers in every direction. Dozens of vessels in various stages of construction floated in the zero-gravity work zones. Some were cargo haulers. Some were colony transports. And some were the new warships, sleek and dangerous, equipped with technology that would have seemed like magic just 20 years ago. "Admiral, the latest construction report," said Commander Patricia Green, his second in command. She handed him a data pad filled with numbers and projections. "We're ahead of schedule on the new shipyard expansion. The precursor manufacturing techniques have cut our build times by 40%. Jack scrolled through the report, nodding with satisfaction. "And the resource situation?" "Better than expected. The mining operations on Titan IV are exceeding quotas. The asteroid processing facility came online last week. We're actually producing more raw materials than we can currently use." It was almost hard to believe. Jack remembered the early days when every colony struggled just to produce enough food and oxygen to keep people alive. Now humanity was building faster than they could use resources. The transformation was staggering. And it was all because of what Derek Hayes had found. The discovery of that first precursor vault had changed everything. News of it had spread across human space like wildfire, reigniting hope in colonists who'd been ready to give up. But that first vault turned out to be just the beginning. As more exploration teams pushed deeper into the outer rim, they found more precursor sites. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Each one contained different gifts left behind by a civilization that had transcended physical existence millions of years ago. On a frozen moon orbiting a dead star, miners working in the ice discovered massive caverns filled with crystalline data cores. Each core was the size of a human fist and contained staggering amounts of information. Star maps showing resource-rich systems the Galactic Council had never charted. Detailed surveys of mineral deposits, rare elements, and energy sources beyond anything known to current science. Human prospectors used those maps to find wealth beyond imagination. Entire asteroids made of pure platinum. Gas giants with atmospheres full of helium-3 for fusion reactors. Planets with cores rich in exotic elements that Earth scientists had only produced a few atoms at a time in laboratories. On an airless rock at the edge of a dying binary star system, a survey team found something even more valuable. A precursor manufacturing facility that still worked perfectly after millions of years. The building was the size of a small city, mostly underground to protect it from radiation and meteor impacts. The facility was automated and astonishingly simple to operate. You fed it raw materials on one end, provided it with power, and gave it a template of what you wanted to create. The machines inside would then produce components made of materials that shouldn't exist according to human physics. Alloys that were stronger than steel but lighter than aluminum. Conductors that moved electrical energy with perfect efficiency and no heat loss. Metamaterials that bent light around them, making objects effectively invisible. Smart materials that could change their properties on command, becoming hard or soft, rigid or flexible, conductive or insulating. Human engineers took those materials and revolutionized their technology. Ships became faster and more efficient. Habitats became safer and more comfortable. Tools became more capable and reliable. In 15 years, human technology had leaped forward by what would have normally taken centuries of development. But the most profound discovery came on a world called Sanctuary, a planet shrouded in perpetual electrical storms that made landing extremely dangerous. A particularly brave exploration team had risked the descent and found ruins similar to what Derek had discovered, but with one crucial difference. Deep beneath the largest structure they found what they called the Knowledge Library. Not a library of books or even digital files. It was something far more advanced. Chambers filled with crystalline matrices that could interface directly with human minds and download information instantaneously. The first scientist to connect with the library had emerged 6 hours later, crying and laughing at the same time. In those 6 hours, she'd absorbed what would have taken a lifetime to learn through conventional study. Mathematics that solved problems Earth's greatest geniuses had struggled with for generations. Physics that explained phenomena the Galactic Council still classified as mysterious and unexplainable. Biology that opened doors to medicines and genetic modifications beyond human imagination. More scientists followed. Then engineers. Then doctors, teachers, administrators, anyone whose work could benefit from advanced knowledge. They had to be careful though. The human brain could only handle so much information at once. They learned to take the downloads in smaller doses, giving their minds time to process and integrate what they'd learned. The knowledge transformed human science almost overnight. Diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia suddenly had cures. Engineering problems that seemed impossible became solvable. Energy production became cleaner and more efficient. Food production technologies ended hunger on every human colony. Each discovery led to more discoveries. Each vault contained hints and clues pointing to other vaults. The precursors had scattered their gifts across the outer rim like seeds planted in a garden, waiting for someone curious enough and desperate enough to find them. The Galactic Council had never looked. Why would they? They were already powerful, already ancient, already comfortable. The idea of searching through the empty darkness beyond their borders for treasures left by some previous civilization had simply never occurred to them. Or if it had occurred, they dismissed it as not worth the effort. But humanity had nothing to lose. Humanity was desperate. And desperate people search in places that comfortable people ignore. Jack understood this better than most. He'd been there in the early days when colonies failed and people died and every small success felt like a miracle. He'd watched humanity claw its way forward one painful step at a time. And he'd watched the transformation as precursor technology turned those painful steps into giant leaps. "Admiral, the population report from Earth just came in," Patricia said, interrupting his thoughts. "They're sending another wave of colonists. 20 million people over the next 5 years." Jack nodded slowly. The exodus from Earth continued and had actually accelerated. What had started as a trickle after Rachel Morrison's speech had become a stream, then a river, and now a flood. People from every nation, every background, every walk of life were volunteering to leave Earth behind and start over in the outer rim. Some came seeking adventure and the chance to see things no human had seen before. Some came for opportunity, knowing that the fastest way to build wealth was on the frontier where everything was new. Some came because they had nothing left to lose, whether from poverty or tragedy or simple dissatisfaction with life on Earth. But all of them came because they believed in the dream that Rachel Morrison had planted 75 years ago. The dream of proving the Galactic Council catastrophically wrong. "Tell them we have room," Jack said. "We have resources. We have work for everyone who wants it." He turned to look at the massive star map displayed on the command center's main screen. Human territory was marked in blue, a color chosen specifically because it was Earth's color from space. The map had started as a single blue dot around Sol. Now it was a spreading stain across the outer rim, covering hundreds of star systems. Not all of those systems were fully developed, of course. Most had only small outposts or survey teams. Some were just markers on the map, claimed but not yet colonized. But the foundation was there. The infrastructure was spreading. The network of trade routes and communication relays was growing stronger every year. Every year, humanity became more established, more permanent, more powerful. And the Galactic Council still hadn't noticed. That fact surprised Jack more than almost anything else about the whole situation. He'd fully expected the ancient powers to react to humanity's expansion, to send observers or diplomats or maybe even threats. After all, humans were supposed to stay in their own system. They'd been explicitly ordered not to expand into galactic space. But there had been nothing. Complete and total silence from Nexus Prime. No communications. No visits. No acknowledgement that humanity even existed. Jack had discussed this strange silence with other admirals, colony governors, and the scientists who studied galactic politics. They had several theories about why the Council ignored them. The most popular theory was simple arrogance. The Council was too proud to care about what happened in the worthless Outer Rim. As far as they were concerned, humans were still trapped around their single yellow star, exactly where they'd been ordered to stay. The possibility that humans had ignored that order and built an empire anyway simply didn't fit the Council's worldview. Another theory suggested the Council was too slow and bureaucratic to notice changes happening on the frontier. Ancient organizations moved slowly. By the time any report about human expansion worked its way through the Council's administrative systems, humanity would have already moved even further. A third theory, which Jack personally found most likely, was that the Council simply didn't believe humans could build anything significant. They dismissed humanity as primitive and doomed to fail. So they literally didn't bother checking on what humans were doing, because they assumed nothing worth noticing could possibly happen. Whatever the reason for their blindness, it was an incredible gift to humanity. Every year of peace was another year to grow stronger. Every year without interference was another year to establish deeper roots, to build more colonies, to discover more precursor technology. The longer the Council ignored them, the harder it would be to uproot humanity later. But Jack knew that ignorance couldn't last forever. "We need to be ready," he said to Patricia and the other senior officers gathered in the command center. "Eventually the Council will notice what we've built. And when they do, they won't be happy about it." "Do you think they'll attack us directly?" asked Colonel Frank Mitchell, head of Bastion's security forces. Jack considered the question carefully. "I think they'll do what powerful beings always do when they feel threatened. They'll try to control us, to limit us, to put us back in our place. Whether that means military action or political pressure or economic sanctions, I can't predict. But we must be ready for anything." He began issuing orders that would shape humanity's future. The shipyards increased production, focusing on military vessels. Research facilities prioritized weapons development and defensive technologies. Defense stations were constructed around key systems, bristling with weapons derived from precursor designs. A formal military structure was established with proper training programs, clear command hierarchies, and detailed contingency plans for various scenarios. They called it the Outer Guard, and its purpose was brutally simple: protect humanity's new home from anyone who tried to take it away. The Guard grew rapidly as volunteers signed up by the millions. Young people born on the colonies who'd never seen Earth. Veterans from Earth's various militaries. Anyone who believed in defending what humanity had built. And their ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen in millennia. Human engineers had reverse-engineered precursor technology and combined it with human innovation to create vessels that were fast, tough, and deadly. Ships that could jump between systems faster than Council vessels. Weapons that hit harder than anything in the known galaxy. Defenses that could withstand attacks that would vaporize conventional ships. 75 years after Rachel Morrison had stood before the Council and been told humanity was worthless, humanity had become something the Council had never imagined possible. They were no longer the weak species begging for acceptance. They were becoming a superpower, built in the darkness, armed with ancient secrets, and motivated by the memory of rejection. And the Council still had no idea what was coming. Director Lisa Bennett stood in the communication center of Bastion Station, surrounded by her advisors and military officers. She was 43 years old, born on one of the first successful colonies, and had never actually set foot on Earth. She represented a new generation of humanity, people who thought of themselves as citizens of the stars rather than refugees from a single planet. In her hand, she held a data crystal containing the most important message humanity would ever send. 3 months of careful planning had gone into crafting every word, every image, every implication. This wasn't a plea or a request. This was a declaration. "Are we absolutely certain about this?" asked General Robert Hayes, commander of the Outer Guard. He was Derek Hayes' son, born in space and raised on stories of his father's discovery. Once we send this, there's no taking it back. The Council will know everything. Lisa looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leadership. Scientists who'd unlocked precursor secrets. Admirals who commanded fleets that would have seemed like fantasy a century ago. Representatives from 100 colony worlds, each one now home to millions of people. We're certain, she said firmly. We've been hiding in the shadows for 75 years. We're strong enough now. It's time they knew what we've become. She inserted the crystal into the transmission array. The technicians had spent weeks configuring the equipment to broadcast on frequencies that hadn't been used in millions of years. Ancient precursor communication channels that the Galactic Council had long since stopped monitoring because they thought nobody else knew they existed. Lisa took a deep breath and activated the transmission. The message shot out across the galaxy at speeds that violated every known law of physics, carried by precursor technology that humanity barely understood but had learned to use. It would reach Nexus Prime in hours instead of the weeks or months that conventional faster-than-light communication required. At Nexus Prime, the message's arrival caused immediate chaos. Alarms blared in the Council's communication center. Technicians scrambled to identify the source of the transmission. Ancient protocols that hadn't been activated in thousands of years suddenly kicked in, routing the message to the Council chamber itself. The 14 Council members were in the middle of a routine session, discussing trade disputes and territory allocation, when every screen in the chamber blazed to life with the same image. A human woman's face, calm and confident, staring directly at them. The Kthra's mandibles clicked in shock. Impossible. Those frequencies are sealed. How did they? Silence, the Valari commanded, its light pulsing with something that might have been concern. Let us hear what the primitive species has to say. Lisa's recorded message began to play. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she said, her voice clear and strong. 75 years ago, you rendered your verdict on humanity. You examined us and found us wanting. You called us worthless, weak, and temporary. You told us we were too primitive to join your civilization. You ordered us to return to our single star and stay there until we either evolved or died out. She paused, letting her words sink in. You were wrong. The image shifted to show Bastion Station in all its massive glory. The Council members leaned forward, studying the structure with growing disbelief. It was huge, easily comparable to some of their own major installations. This is Bastion Station, Lisa continued. Home to 3 million humans and growing every day. It didn't exist 75 years ago. We built it from nothing in a region of space you told us was worthless. The image changed again, now showing the shipyards with dozens of vessels under construction. Ships that made the Council members murmur in recognition and concern. Those weren't primitive human designs. Those were built with technology that looked disturbingly familiar. Our fleet, Lisa said simply. 417 vessels equipped with technology your species thought was lost forever. We build more every month. More images followed in rapid succession. Human colonies on diverse worlds, from lush garden planets to harsh desert moons. Cities rising from empty ground. Farms feeding billions. Children playing under alien suns. Each image drove home the same point. Humanity had thrived in the darkness the Council had dismissed. Then Lisa showed them something that made even the ancient archivist stir from its usual indifference. A precursor gate, massive and unmistakable, glowing with active power. We have found and activated 7 precursor gates across the outer rim, Lisa said. We control access to regions of space your species stopped exploring millions of years ago. We have discovered resources you don't possess and knowledge you've forgotten existed. The Council chamber erupted in chaos. The Vanth was hissing in fury. The mycelians' chemical signals flared with outrage. Even the normally calm crystalline architects hummed with what could only be described as shock. Impossible, the Kthra shouted. The precursor sites were all catalogued and sealed millennia ago. There are no active gates. There haven't been for as long as you've been comfortable, Lisa interrupted, her recorded message continuing as if she'd anticipated their objections. You stopped searching because you had everything you wanted. You stopped exploring because you controlled everything that mattered. You dismissed the outer rim as worthless because you were too arrogant to look properly. The image returned to Lisa's face, and now her expression was harder, more challenging. We looked. We searched where you wouldn't. We found what you'd abandoned. And we've built something you never expected us to build. The final series of images showed the true scope of human expansion. Star maps with hundreds of systems marked in blue. Population statistics showing billions of humans living across the outer rim. Resource production numbers that rivaled some council species. Military readiness reports that would give any strategist pause. This message serves as formal notification, Lisa said, her tone shifting to something official and final. Humanity claims the Outer Rim as sovereign territory. All systems we have settled, surveyed, or developed are now under human administration and protection. We are not asking for your permission. We are informing you of established fact. The council sat in stunned silence as the message continued. We understand you may find this unacceptable. You may wish to dispute our claim. You may want to send your fleets to remind us of our proper place. You may want to take what we've built and distribute it among your member species, as you've always done with younger civilizations. Lisa smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. We invite you to try. But understand this, we are not the frightened species that begged for your approval 75 years ago. We are not weak. We are not primitive. We are not alone. And we will defend what we have built with every resource at our disposal. The image shifted one final time, showing Lisa standing at the observation window of Bastion Station, looking out at the stars. Humanity thanks you for your verdict 75 years ago, she said quietly. Your rejection freed us from wasting time seeking your approval. Your contempt gave us the motivation to surpass you. Your arrogance blinded you to what we were becoming. In a very real sense, the verdict you delivered was the greatest gift you could have given us. She turned to face the camera directly. We will remember it always. And we suggest you remember this. The galaxy is bigger than you realized. Your time as its only major power is ending. The age of human expansion has begun. How you respond to that reality is your choice. But the reality itself is no longer negotiable. The transmission ended. The council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then everyone started talking at once, voices raised in anger, confusion, and something that might have been fear. This is outrageous, the Kthra shouted. They cannot simply declare sovereignty over entire regions of space. The precursor technology is beyond them, the Vanth argued. They must have stolen it or received help from someone. No species develops that fast naturally. Perhaps, the Valari said, its light flickering uncertainly, we underestimated them. The archivist's ancient voice cut through the chaos. The question is not whether we underestimated them. Clearly we did. The question is what we do about it now. We send the fleet, the Kthra insisted. We crush this insolence before it spreads. And fight a war across how many systems? The archivist countered. They claim hundreds of systems across the Outer Rim. They have 7 active precursor gates that give them mobility we cannot match. They have been preparing for this confrontation while we were ignorant of their very existence. Does this sound like a war we would win easily? That stopped the heated arguments cold. The council members looked at each other, reality beginning to sink in. Then what do you suggest? The Valari asked. We simply accept this? I suggest, the archivist said slowly, that we consider a different approach. We invite them to negotiate. Not as subjects seeking membership. As equals seeking mutual agreement. Never, the Kthra hissed. Then prepare for a war that might cost us everything we've built, the archivist replied calmly. They have nothing to lose. We have everything to risk. Which position would you rather negotiate from? After hours of debate, a decision was reached. The council would send a carefully worded invitation to humanity. Not an apology, they would never apologize. But an acknowledgement. A proposal for discussions regarding territorial recognition, trade agreements, and collaborative research. 6 months later, Lisa Bennett's ship approached Nexus Prime. But this time humanity's vessel wasn't approaching as a supplicant. The ship was called Vindication, and it was surrounded by an escort of 12 advanced warships. A not-so-subtle reminder that humanity came now as a power that could defend itself. Captain Angela Rodriguez stood beside Lisa on the bridge. Are we really going to negotiate with them? After everything they said about us? Everything they did. Lisa thought about Rachel Morrison, who died believing humanity would have to struggle for centuries before gaining recognition. She thought about Derek Hayes, who'd made the discovery that changed everything. She thought about all the colonists who'd left Earth to build something new in the darkness. She thought about every human who'd turned rejection into determination. Yes, she said. We'll negotiate. But not as beggars. Not as children asking for permission. We'll negotiate as what we've become. A power they cannot ignore, cannot control, and cannot dismiss. The Vindication docked at Nexus Prime with full honors. This time there were guards for the human delegation. This time there were assistants and advisors. This time humanity came not alone but strong. The council chamber hadn't changed. The same 14 platforms. The same ancient beings. The same architecture designed to intimidate visitors. But when Lisa walked to the central platform, she didn't walk alone. She was accompanied by Admiral Jack Sullivan, General Robert Hayes, and representatives from the major colony worlds. They stood together, presenting a united front. The Valari spoke first, its tone carefully neutral. Humanity has surprised us with your rapid development. Yes, Lisa said simply, offering nothing more. We may have been premature in our initial assessment of your species. Yes, Lisa repeated. We are prepared to discuss terms for humanity's integration into the Galactic Council. Limited membership initially, of course, with appropriate oversight and restrictions until... No. The single word hung in the air like a blade. The Kthra leaned forward from its platform. No? You refuse membership after spending decades seeking it? We don't seek council membership, Lisa said clearly. We seek formal recognition as an independent sovereign power. We seek trade agreements as equals, not integration as subordinates. We seek partnership, not submission to your authority. That is completely unacceptable, the Vanth hissed. Lisa shrugged, the gesture deliberately casual and dismissive. Then we have nothing to discuss. The Outer Rim belongs to humanity. You may accept that reality or you may challenge it with military force. But you will never control it or dictate terms to us. Those days are over. She turned to leave, her delegation following. Wait, the archivist called. You would truly walk away from this opportunity? After everything your species sacrificed to reach this point? Lisa looked back at the ancient being. 75 years ago you gave us a verdict. You told us we had no place among you. We accepted that verdict. We built our own place instead, and it turned out to be far better than anything you could have offered. We don't need membership in your club anymore. We have our own alliance, our own territory, our own future. She gestured toward the windows showing the vast expanse of stars. The Outer Rim is barely explored. The precursor legacy is extensive. We've only begun to discover what's out there. Perhaps in another 75 years, when we've uncovered more of what your species was too comfortable to search for, you'll be ready to negotiate as true equals. Until then, enjoy your verdict. We certainly have. Lisa and her delegation left the council chamber. Behind them, the ancient powers sat in uncomfortable silence, facing a reality they'd never imagined. They were no longer the only major power in the galaxy. Within a generation, everything changed. Younger species throughout the galaxy heard about humanity's success and saw a different path forward. You didn't need the council's approval to build a civilization. You didn't need ancient lineage to claim territory. You needed courage, determination, and the willingness to venture into unknown darkness. Applications to join humanity's Outer Rim alliance began to outnumber applications to the Galactic Council. The balance of power that had remained stable for thousands of years began to shift. On Earth, in a museum in Geneva, they preserved the recording of that first council session where Rachel Morrison had been humiliated. Visitors from across human space came to see it, to hear the words that had dismissed their species, to remember what they'd overcome. Beside the recording was a quote attributed to Rachel Morrison, spoken in her final days. They gave us their verdict, we were nothing. We gave them our answer, watch us. The galaxy had watched. The verdict had been overturned. Not by the Council's mercy, but by humanity's absolute refusal to accept it. And somewhere in the darkness of the Outer Rim, new colony ships continued to launch, carrying millions more humans to worlds waiting to be discovered, driven by the same dream that had started 75 years ago. The dream of proving that rejection could become the foundation of an empire.